New releases, you might have noticed the odd comment or the odd poster about Borat starring Sacha Baron Cohen.
Sacha Baron Cohen, creator of Ali G.
Another former schoolmate of yours?
Well, not a school, somebody who went to the same school.
Okay.
He's a lot younger than me, so I never met the guy or anything. Because obviously, when you're in school, you never speak to anyone in different years. That would be considered to be completely unacceptable. In the case of Ali G, started off as a small screen character who would do 5-minute skits, then proceeded to make one of the worst British comedy movies in living memory, Ali G in the House, which was absolutely toe-curlingly awful in every respect. Then Borat, the next character, Kazakhstan's second greatest journalist, again bumbling, doing sort of reality-type, apparently staged interviews in which the interviewees don't realise that he's somebody taking the mick, now expanded to a full-length feature film in which Kazakhstan's reporter is sent to America. And when he gets to America, he sees Pamela Anderson on television, decides to travel from one side of America to the other in order to meet and literally bag Pamela Anderson en route, meeting and being rude to an assortment of people. Couple of questions. Firstly, it is always unclear as to exactly how staged the encounters are and how much the other people are in on the joke. In the case of the American Feminists, there was a thing in the newspaper that they didn't know at the time. They were genuinely offended. Then later on, they realised they'd been hoodwinked. Then they got the joke in inverted commas, blah, 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 blah. At the very beginning of Borat, there is a sequence which a lot of people have referred to, which is really audaciously offensive in a way which is quite adventurous, which is a made-up ceremony called the running of the Jew, which is like, the running of the bull in Pamplona. And it's really ostentatiously in your face, outrageous anti-Semitism in a way that you can't believe anybody would actually do on screen. Now, as everyone knows, Sacha Baron Cohen is Jewish himself, and the point that he's making in this apparently is about anti-Semitism. And there is a moment, a frisson there, when you think, blimey, this movie really is going to step over the edge, and it is going to do the thing that really daring, adventurous comedy can do, which is to step so far beyond the bounds of taboo that it achieves a kind of purity of morality. Sadly, the beginning is never lived up to by the rest of the film. And there's a number of problems that I have with it. In the case of the American Feminist thing, well, what's the point? I mean, what is the point of that? Talk about soft targets. I mean, there's a bunch of very reasonable American feminists who sit in a room with somebody who tells them that women have a brain the size of a squirrel, and half the audience laughs and blah, 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 and then finally they get fed up and they walk out, and that's the end of the gag. What point are you making? The American feminists are stuffy? No. That Kazakh's primary reporter is sexist and misogynist? Well, that's kind of been established already. It's an awful lot of trouble for a very, very simple joke. And then what proceeds to happen is that the targets that get hit get softer and softer. There is a scene, a rodeo scene, in which Borat stands up and firstly praises America's war of terror. And war of terror, boom, boom, and the audience cheer and laugh. And then he says, I hope that Iraq gets bombed to the point that even the lizards are killed, and people are still cheering. Then he starts to sing the alleged Kazakh national anthem, which is all about potassium, to the sound of the Star Spangled Banner. And the crowd start to turn. They realise that they've been had, and they start to boo. Now, here's my question. I sat in a room, incidentally, that was packed for the screening of Borat, and everyone around me, and I mean everyone, was howling like hyenas. It was one of those really strange experiences when I actually thought, I may not be part of the same species as anyone in this room, because it is a very, very strange experience that everyone around me was just howling with laughter. My question about it is this. Laughing at stupid Southern American hicks is a very, very soft and a very easy thing to do. It's also, Kurt Vonnegut once said something about, he said that people tend to share ideas not because they agree with the ideas, but because people like to agree with other people. And you can often put yourself in a circumstance, I mean, you can say something outrageous and the people around you can appear to agree with it for a while, because actually people just tend to agree with things that are being said, and there may be a political point in that, but it's not a particularly profound political point. And I'm not entirely happy with somebody, a well-educated British person going over there and just laughing at stupid America. I think there is a rampant stream of anti-Americanism which is at loose in the culture at the moment, and I'm really not entirely happy with it. Then there's the whole thing about the Pamela Anderson gag, that he falls in love with Pamela Anderson on television, and he pursues Pamela Anderson until he finally gets to a book signing where he meets her, and he attacks her with a bag. The joke is, this is a Kazakh wedding thing, he puts the bag over her head and she has to marry him. She seems to be genuinely shocked and startled. Now, I have no idea how set up the scene is. Obviously, by the fact that it's in the movie, there's been some clearance in the end. But my discomfort is this. If it's completely set up, then Pamela Anderson is a much better actor than I ever had her down for, in which case I don't understand why the gag is about Pamela Anderson. If it's not, it's just another scene of a woman out of her depth. I mean, a rubbish, terrible actress and whatever, all the rest of it, being bullied and jumped by somebody in circumstances which I don't find entirely comfortable. Now, people would say the whole point of Borat is that it's meant to be uncomfortable. It's meant to make you feel difficult. It's meant to make you feel awkward. Well, fine. If the awkwardness and if the difficulty is to skewer people who really deserve to be skewered. Now, there are cases in which there's one point when he meets up with a bunch of frat kids who are really horrible and really unpleasant and really obnoxious and really misogynistic. And I kind of feel like, well, hey, if they look ridiculous in public, they've kind of got it coming to them. But there's another scene in which he goes to visit a house in which he is taught etiquette by Americans. And he insults the guests and he insults their wives. And in the end, he produces at the door a black prostitute, and he kind of gets himself thrown out, and the implication is they're throwing him out because the woman's black, but that's actually not really what's happening. What's happening is that everything is broken down at that point, and it's not as simple as it looks. And the proof that it's not as simple as it looks is the amount of times the movie has to resort to simple gross out humour, to producing a bag of poo at the dinner table, to a nude wrestling scene in which with men wrestling, fat guys wrestling each other, prolonged, goes on for about 5 minutes, which all descends into jackass territory. So question is, did it tell me anything I don't know about America? Not really. Did it occasionally insult people who have no need to be insulted? Yes. More important than all of that, in the midst of it all, was it side-splittingly funny? And the honest answer to this is, according to everyone else in that room with me, yes. According to me, not once did I laugh.
Jeff Marchant in... no idea where he is. Anyway, he sent an email.
Limbo.
On Borat, saw this last night. In 30-odd years, I've never laughed so much in a cinema, which by Mark's standard rating of whether a comedy is any good, it must be okay, I think. I've been thinking about romance, explosions and other aspects of the film all day and chuckling. Means nothing to me because I haven't seen it, but will if you have. Phil, saw the Borat film last night. Cheap, crass, simple humour, but the audience seemed happy. It sounds as though in most screenings there'll be one or two people like you who don't like it. And most people will. This is Andy says, watch Borat last night. Something interesting happened. The cinema crowd late last night were laughing heartily through the running of the Jew, amused by women's brains the size of squirrels and Borat's encounter with the Washington Gay Pride rally. But as soon as the rodeo guy said that all gays and Muslims should be killed, there was a sort of collective gasp. Borat is funny because we know he doesn't really mean it. Rodeo guy wasn't funny because that's what he really thinks.
No, there are people in the film who clearly, hold thoroughly reprehensible views. But there are also other people who were just, somehow being caught up in it. The whole point about all this is it wouldn't matter so much if it did what it says on the tin, which is that every single newspaper says, so funny it'll burst half the blood vessels in your face, funniest film of the year, so funny it should be at blah, 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 blah. I think there is a contempt involved in it. I think that there is a smugness involved in it. I think there is something about the nature of the comedy which relies on a form of superiority with which I am not comfortable. Now, I do not doubt for one moment, let me be absolutely clear about this, I don't doubt for one moment there is a philosophy behind it. And I don't doubt for one moment that actually the intentions of a lot of it are completely sincere. I just don't actually have much interest in those intentions. It's a little bit, for me, like sitting around, with a bunch of people, discussing, isn't such and such is so outrageous and such is so outrageous, thinking, yeah, you know what, I want to do the washing up now.
This is 5 Live. Mark Kermode is here and makes appropriate movie reviews and the odd laugh about assorted football
things that he doesn't understand.
Stories. Jake in Reading snuck off work and saw the midday edition of Borat. Found it mildly amusing. It's hard to really laugh when you're the only person in the cinema.
Yeah, although that is what I felt like, and I was in a packed cinema.
Paolo in London, what does Mark think of the idea that Borat plays on how much we're willing to accept, in this case racism, as long as a film works? Borat is a funny film. I've never sat in a cinema where people have laughed so much. That's great for the film, but also worried me in equal measure regarding its dubious politics. Maybe the film is interesting simply because of these mixed feelings that it produces. So it's the heart of your doubts about this film that actually people are laughing with it as well as at it.
Well, I do think that there are some people who will laugh with it. But then I think the way in which people react to those sort of things is actually unpoliceable. What I think is, I don't think for 1 minute that what the creators are doing in their use of racism, in their use of sexism, in their use of homophobia, I don't think they are in any way supporting those things. What they're trying to do is to skewer them. I think they're skewering them in a rather limp and not very well executed way.